Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Session 6 of the NHS Project Futures Compass 22.2 event, How to Ensure Your Complex Programme is Set Up for Success. My name is Matt Baker. I'm Head of Portfolio Office at Health Education England, and I'm delighted to be hosting this session to be able to introduce our two speakers. Mark Angus joins us from NHS South, Central and West, where he is PMO Director at the COVID-19 Vaccines Deployment Programme. Mark is an operational and strategic transformation leader with over 38 years experience working for and with the NHS, including 7 years at an acute trust executive level and 7 years working as independent consultant leading and delivering transformation and improvement initiatives. More recently, Mark led the tactical response to the COVID-19 pandemic for an integrated care system and has for the last year and a half led the National COVID-19 Vaccination Deployment Programme, Central PMO function, and has been a member of the National COVID-19 VDP Senior Leadership Team. First, I will hear from Ben Krempel, who is also from NHS South, Central and West. Ben is a Programme Director in the Transformation Team at NHS South, Central and West. He used to run customer service, technical support and sales operations for global corporations before moving to the NHS in 2014 to make an impact on more than the bottom line. Since joining the NHS South, Central and West, he has delivered numerous complex commercial, operational and transformation programmes in different parts of the health and care system, as well as leading incident management centres for NHS England and improvement during Brexit, the pandemic response and the ensuing vaccination programme. So Ben, over to you.
Thanks very much, Matt, and I hope you can hear me okay. Do let me know if not. And just to check that you can see the slide on the screen there. I hope that's coming through okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Fabulous. So yeah, thanks very much, Matt, and good afternoon, everybody. Really pleased to be joining you as part of the festival. Great opportunity to speak with a lot of fellow project and program professionals from so many different organizations. As you can see on screen, and as Matt's just referenced, we'd like to share some thoughts on structuring large and complex programs and gearing them for success based on some of that experience over the last year or two, particularly supporting the COVID-19 vaccination program regionally as well as nationally. Before we start though, we'd just like to ask a quick question. And we can come back to this later in the session. And I'm hoping you'll be able to see the question on screen. And we'd just like to know from you what you feel is the main purpose of a PMO. And there will be some options there for you to choose from. If you could just select the one you think is most relevant, and I'll just give you a moment or two to have a look at those responses.
You'll find on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a poll option. If people click on the poll, you'll see the 5 options are in there to vote on.
Thanks, Matt. And I think while colleagues are having a look at that, we'd like to play a short video that will bring you back, I'm afraid, to some fairly challenging times, but it will, I think, help set the context for our work and for the environment we've been operating. So if you could please play that first video.
Good evening. The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
So why do we think it might be helpful to reflect back on that situation, that environment, and the program, and share some of those experiences with you today? I mean, in essence, it's because we see quite a lot of parallels between operating effectively at the peak of the pandemic and at the peak of the vaccination program, and how we need to operate or can operate effectively in recovery, with organisations facing really significant delivery challenges that will span multiple years. And recovering and delivering services in a sustainable way needs most, if not all, health and care organisations to transform, and transformational change can be really hard. So that's not going to be the greatest insight you'll hear during the festival, I'm sure, but it doesn't mean it's not true. And that transformational change can be really hard because it needs that sustained effort from many partners, from different organisations, working at pace, collaborating over a long period of time, when maybe that hasn't been a way of working in the past. And that process can be really challenging, even when conditions are favourable. And as we know, conditions are far from favourable. Structural reforms, operational pressures, budget constraints, a stretched and exhausted workforce, etc., etc. And in that context, recovery and transformation programs can be really volatile. They can be very uncertain, certainly very complicated, and often quite ambiguous. They shift and change all the time. And because the NHS loves a good acronym, as we know, VUCA has become something of a motto on the National Vaccine Deployment Programme, where it's true that sort of the delivery of really complex objectives in seemingly impossible timescales has become the norm. But you saw in the video how successfully that's been achieved, and I'm sure everybody will have experienced that in some way. So while the program is gradually transitioning now into more of an integration and normalization phase, the pace can still be unrelenting. For example, at the moment, as we head towards the autumn booster campaign. And over the last 12-18 months, the level of volatility and complexity has been driven by the emergence, often simultaneously, of the new vaccines, the new variants, new priority cohorts, new policies, guidance from the JCVI. So often what's true in the morning is different by the end of the day, and a day can feel like a week or more in normal program terms, and nothing stays the same for long. So I wonder how that resonates with people. Do you recognize that sort of environment? Is that the sort of context you find yourselves operating in? We recognize not every program will fit neatly into one of these categories, but we'd like to ask a second question, actually, which I hope may be on screen now, which is just to understand how you would describe the last sort of major program or project you're involved with. What sort of environment were you working with, and what sort of alignment was there in the program? So I'll just give a moment or two for that poll to play out, and it would be great, Matt, if you don't mind, just sort of summarising what the responses there are. Interesting to see that there are not too many stable programs with clear alignment behind the mission, and a bit of a mix through the others, and that's very typical, isn't it? And it depends on the genesis of a program and how these have evolved and are being delivered. But I guess one of the differences then, so not always strong alignment to a mission, for looking at those responses, and I guess the role of the national vaccination program has been to help the country come out of lockdown and move forward again, and that presented us with a really clear mission. Everyone involved had a personal as well as a professional stake in the program's success, and they were really committed, therefore, to achieving the core purpose, which as you can see on screen here, was to deliver the maximum available doses of the vaccine with the highest uptake in priority groups to minimize morbidity and mortality as quickly and safely as possible. So the mission was really clear, but just really hard to deliver. And yet the vaccination program has been one of the most successful in our history. So while the success can be attributed to the incredible efforts of so many tens and hundreds of thousands of professionals and volunteers across the country, we were privileged to play a role at the core of that national programme, where there were up to 500 people at peak working in the national programme team in 2021, with partners from health and care and government, the military, commercial partners, all harnessing their combined capabilities to achieve that mission. And among other support we provided nationally and regionally, SCW was asked to run, and we continue to run the central PMO. So a team of up to 50 people at peak, a few less than that now, but they've done so much more than provide reporting and assurance, which is often how a PMO can be perceived. But it's fair to say that the central PMO team's really been the heartbeat of the programme. They've been cultural leaders. They've helped drive collaboration and delivery in that really challenging environment. So to tell us a little more about how we structured that programme to be effective, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Mark Angus, who, as Matt said, is the PMO director on the vaccine deployment programme, and Mark will share some further thoughts on the value that can be achieved by investing in the right skills at the core of those most complex programmes.
Great,
Mark,
thank
over to
you. Yeah, thank you, Ben. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And first of all, I just must start with an apology. I'm at the HQ in London, Wellington House, for NHS England today, because today is a very important day for the programme. And actually, the offices are very busy, and therefore I'm in an open office. So if you hear some background noise, I really do apologise for that. But it's just not been possible to get into a quiet room today. I think, as I say, it's a really important day today for the programme. We're launching the autumn booster campaign today. Over 1 million letters will be landing on the doorsteps of anyone 75 and over. And over the course of the next few days, 3 million text invites will be going out, and then we'll be quickly following up with over 65-year-olds, and then working our way through the kind of priority cohorts. And I think the video that was shown earlier is slightly out of date. Since that time, we've launched to 5 to 15-year-olds. We have the spring booster campaign. And as I say, we're now looking at our second autumn booster campaign. I think Max helpfully introduced and gave some background in terms of my professional career to date. And I think those of you who kind of listened carefully to what was being said would have noted that the first time PMO was in my title was when I arrived on the COVID-19 programme 18 months ago. Principally, my background has been operational management in the NHS acute level, and then system transformation at integrated care system level. I've commissioned PMOs. I've run programs supported by PMOs, but it's the first time I've run a PMO. And I think as I go through our journey, which has had lots of twists and turns, fortunately, far more highs than lows, but it's not been without its really challenging moments. I think one of my reflections is the fact that I didn't come already armed with "this is how I run PMOs," because I've had to act in a bit more like a jungle guide to respond and adapt to that volatile, ambiguous, uncertain environment that we've had to operate in. So I'm going to speak quite frankly about our journey. Hopefully that will be helpful to colleagues. We haven't got this right. We've made loads of mistakes. We've learnt lots. This isn't about saying this is how you should run your PMOs to tackle whatever organisational problem you're trying to solve. But hopefully kind of sharing our experience will help inform your thinking. I think one of the things that we're really keen to do is ensure that there's a legacy given the success of this program, and that we're able to pick from the program those things that can translate and scale up across the NHS and across the public sector in actual fact. So hopefully by sharing this, it's helpful, but you'll be the judge of that. So as I say, I've been involved in the program for 18 months. The program started a year before then, and the first job that we had, was to transition the PMO from a consultancy run PMO. It had to be stood up in flight rapidly. So it was initially mobilized and established by a consultancy firm. So when I came in in April, the first thing was to transition it from a consultancy-based resource model to an NHS resource model, so that we could establish a model that was more sustainable going forward. And that involved transitioning 27 roles at the time. The PMO was 27 strong over a 2-month period. And we had to do that without disrupting the program in its delivery of its mission. It was like sort of taking over the controls of a plane with 300 plus passengers, whilst learning to fly the plane in a very heavy, turbulent environment. So we had to do that really carefully and in a very considered way. A number of you may have, I'm sure, have managed transition projects, so I'm not wanting to teach you to suck eggs, but we had to carefully plan this. We worked very closely with the consultant provider. We had extended induction periods with checklists to make sure that everything was handed over smoothly. Our objective was not to come in as a big fanfare that we were taking over. It was actually the opposite. It was to manage the transition so smoothly that, other than some names changing and some faces changing, the program wouldn't notice. The program could get on and deliver what it needed to deliver. So we managed that. Actually, there were some teething problems, but we were able to rapidly identify those. We did retain some consultancy support for a short period of time, just to manage some of the more tricky transitions. But on the whole, we were able to manage that transition quite smoothly. Once the transition process was complete, we then needed to get on with the job of further developing, embedding the role of the central PMO function within the program. And our approach was, of course, first and foremost, our responsibility was to make sure that all of the things that are fundamental to running a complex program, that keep the program safe, are in place, are robust. So things like governance, systems, processes, and templates. We need to make sure that they're in place, they're embedded, there was a consistent approach across the program. But what we wanted to ensure was that it wasn't just a PMO that did those things and did those very well. It was also a PMO that actually helped the program deliver its mission, added value, and delivered impact, so that it could deliver its overarching mission, which, as was described by Ben just a moment ago, and I'll paraphrase it, it was to get as many jabs in arms as quickly and safely as possible, ensuring that we had equitable access to all to save and protect lives. And I think we were in a unique environment because there was that collective and personal stake in the mission. There was also the favourable condition that money was not the constraint to enabling this to happen. And I recognise that we're in a very different environment now as we come out the other side of the emergency response, and that brings about additional challenges. So the slide here just kind of attempts to describe the role of the P&O within the COVID-19 program architecture. And I think, all PMOs are different, right? Certainly my experience, they can be all sorts of things. We have a poll, we have some questions, which is our third poll of the day. Hopefully the technology is working. What do you feel is the best model for a PMO? If you Google search or you read your PMO guidebooks or the different methodologies, there are centralized PMOs, decentralized, hybrid, directive, controlling, supportive, enterprise, value-driven, etc. There are all sorts of PMO models. So I'd be interested in your kind of view about what the best model is in terms of ensuring success of your program and your experience. But the way our PMO is set up is really to be the critical interface between national policy and strategy and the operational delivery layers within the program, helping translate that strategy into impact delivery, and to do that rapidly. And you can see on this graphic all of the external stakeholders that the program has worked with and continues to work with, and then the internal structure where we have 11, they're not all indicated here, but we have 11 work streams at a national level, but where the sharp end is the sites and systems that actually deliver the vaccination on the ground. And so we work very closely with the 7 NHS regions, who then work with the 42 now integrated care boards, who then work with their providers and at site level. So we are an important kind of central pillar for both that external interface and managing those external stakeholders, as well as working both horizontally and vertically to support the program in delivery. So really kind of, I think, hopefully helpful to kind of understand that positioning. I think also we're in a unique position within the program to ensure that we play a role in embedding the core values of the program and ensure that we have a consistent way of working across the program. And I think certainly in my experience, this PMO has tried to play a more broader role than I've experienced in other PMOs. And it's tried to aspire to what I don't know if anyone knows somebody called Lauren Barnard, who is the world #1 PMO influencer, called high impact engineering for the program, helping to solve problems of the program, enabling collaboration, continually moving, adapting, and evolving to the needs of the program. Not this is the model and we stick to that model. It's actually what does the program need, and adapting quickly to meet those needs. So I think there's some kind of key things in terms of how do we achieve that, what have we learned, and how we approach this to be that enabling player within the program. So I think the first thing is my position as PMO director. So as the PMO director, I sit at the top table. That means I hear strategy and policy being developed, and then I can help translate that into the operational delivery and make sure that my team supports that. We facilitate all of the senior leadership discussions, which means that we enable a collaborative approach to discussions between national colleagues and regional colleagues, and we help set the tone. We make sure that the agenda is the right agenda, and that we're focusing on the things that will help ensure the program maintains focused on delivery of its mission. We have a flexible and central embedded resource model, 50% of the resources central and looks after all of those important governance, risk management, records management, planning functions and internal and external reporting. And then 50% of our resources actually embedded into the work streams so that we develop real business understanding, develop trust, strong relationships, which enables us to rapidly share information and knowledge across the program and help solve problems deep into the program. And we also have a very agile resource model. So we started off with 27 people. At its height, we got up to close to 50 in response to the Omicron outbreak, and we're now contracting, recognizing that the program is changing post the launch of the autumn campaign. I think common questions related to PMOs in my experience are: what type of PMO do we need, and how well we know that it has been successful? I think the answer to the first question, having been on this journey, is linked to the answer to the second. Americo Pinto, who's the founder of the Global PMO Alliance, talks about success being measured by perception of value. Essentially, if your PMO is helping you solve your business problems to deliver your program objective, then it is being successful. And therefore, it needs to support the things and have the skills and the capability to help you solve the problems, not just be a scorekeeper. It has to keep your program safe and make sure all of those things are in place. But if it's really going to drive value, it needs to be driving impact. In terms of this slide, I think we'd skipped one slide slightly too early, but I think it's all hopefully flowing okay for you guys on the receiving end. But one of the things that we do in facilitating those senior leadership discussions, we always start every meeting with the mission. So to make sure we're all clear, that's why we're in the room, we're in the virtual room. We set the battle rhythm, which has had to change and adapt. In response to Omicron, we went to a 7-day, twice a day battle rhythm with rapid reports from work streams and regions, highlight reports, exception reports, problem identification, rapid resolution of the problems, very, very intense. So we've had to shift the move and according to the needs of the program. We've learned a lot from the military. When I joined the program, the military had been on board for quite some time, rolled off about 10 months ago. And one of the things that they did was ask the question: what do we need to be awesome today? What help, support do you need from each other, from colleagues to be awesome? So that was a question that we ask every session. And you know, we as a PMO worked hard to ensure that we maintain stakeholder trust and credibility, because without that, they're not necessarily going to be incentivized to help and certainly help resolve problems quickly and unblock things. If we can go on to the next slide, that'd be great. Sorry, didn't quite avoid that. I think the other thing we have tried to do is to act as the anchor as well as the impact engine for the program and provide that strong, consistent core as the program team and PMO construct has continually changed. So as new key stakeholders come on board or new senior people join the program, we're a touch point to induct them to the program, ensure they're aware of our ways of working and support them into the program so that they understand very quickly how the program works, so they can make an impact and a difference. And also we've played a role in ensuring that we capture learning. I think about going into the autumn campaign this time around compared to this time last year, we're in such a much stronger place because we've learned from all the various campaigns. We now have stock visibility in a way that we've never had before. We've got that alongside flu vaccine availability at site level, so we can really understand the opportunity for co-administration of both vaccines. And we have an approach now that enables us to be dynamic in how we invite people to the program, so that we can invite people as quickly as systems can go to be able to vaccinate them. So how we have harvested and applied learning has been critical, so that we continue to improve our offer back to the program, continue to promote best practice. Conscious of time, so we could move on to the next. Great. So some of the things that we've learned and done during the course of the program is, first of all, as I said earlier, we haven't imposed established tools or products and applied them to the program. What we've done is looked at what tools and products can work best for the program, and then adapted and tailored them to meet the needs of the program. So an example of that is we have developed a toolkit for new vaccine deployments that capture all of the elements that are required to successfully deploy a new vaccine into the program, including an embedded after action review process. And this is completely tailored specifically to the program. I think the other learning that we had from the outset of the program is that we took quite a generic approach to the resource model and focused in on your traditional program managers and project managers. We quickly realized that actually, certainly with the complexity of the program and the scale of the program, that we needed more specialist skills. So we established specialist risk managers, specialist governance managers within our resource model, and we quickly adapted to that. And then finally, in our desire to be helpful and solve problems, we on many occasions step in to lead mini projects within the program that would normally be outside the scope of a traditional PMO. And it's important when doing that and being responsive in that way that we maintain the focus on the core role of the PMO to ensure those things, governance, risk management, records management, etc., remain robust, whilst we are responsive to those emerging needs from the program. We could move to the next slide, please. So one example of stepping outside of the box from a PMO perspective, just want to highlight how we helped problem solve and learn, was the launch of Grab a Jab. Back in June 21, we recognised there was a problem in that we were opening up the offer of vaccination to young cohorts. And it became evident that younger cohorts wanted to access the programme and that offer in a very different way to those more elderly cohorts who were used to accessing services through their GP practice. So having identified the problem, we listened to the feedback that we had. The desire was to have local walk-in services that were convenient to people, close to where they worked, close to where they commuted, and were open at the time that would best suit them. So we developed walk-in services across the country. The problem was nobody had visibility of where they were and how to access them. So as a PMO, we led a project which from start to finish took 8 days, where we worked with all of the walk-in sites across the country. We captured a significant number of data points to enable us to play that back on a Grab a Jab website to enable people to have visibility of where they could access those walk-in services. And following the launch of that service, we saw significant improvement, not just in younger people, but also people coming forward from ethnic minority groups, which had up to that point been really difficult to serve and offer the vaccine in a meaningful way to them. So I think that that hopefully is just kind of brings to life some of the work of the PMO and our approach. I think from my perspective, if you're thinking about a problem you need to solve and you're looking to set up a PMO to help you solve that problem, my advice would be do not conform to a single model of PMO. Focus on what skills you need to solve the problem you're trying to fix. Give the PMO, invest in PMO leadership, and give your PMO leader the ability to earn the right to be at the top table so they can quickly, rapidly translate strategy and policy into delivery for you, and ensure that you have a model that is agile and it can adapt quickly to changing needs from a program or organizational perspective. That's it for me. Back to Ben.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks very much. And you mentioned, leaving a legacy from the program. I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, but just to say that's part of the reason we're so excited to join this group and this community of interest and professional development, because part of our role since these sort of major national programs has been to start redeploying staff who have worked in this environment into other programs in other parts of the system, regionally, locally, where they can share a lot of this learning and help develop these capabilities, not just in our own teams internally, but also with our clients' in-house teams, all the organizations we work with. And we've also, they've been key to developing our own community of interest for PPM professionals internally. And we're also now sort of undertaking some really targeted recruitment programs. Mark again referenced those specialist skills and the particular mindset people need to be effective in a PMO environment. So really trying to boost the capacity we've got available, and also bringing a lot of graduates in. We've got an excellent graduate management scheme, and we're now giving them development paths through this sort of environment so that we can build that skill base for the NHS for the future. So there's a really strong link into this group. We're really glad to be getting involved. And just if there maybe a couple of minutes for some questions, if Yanis had any that we wanted to pick out, but we will have a look at those afterwards and we'll get back to any questions that we have unfortunately run out of time for. But thanks all very much for listening. Yanis.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Ben. So quite a few questions. I'm conscious of the time, so I'll try and pick one or two of the most popular ones. The first one is, did you feel the environment you were working in at the time was under an emergency response and therefore more focused into delivering this? That's the reason for its success.
I mean, sorry, I'll answer that. I mean, there's no doubt that the context is different to normal project or program conditions. So we did have the benefit of that and the fact that we were not resource constrained. But having said that, I think some of the principles and approach and learning can absolutely be applied to any program project, particularly those that are complex and particularly challenging. So I think recognize that the conditions are different, but I think there is learning. One thing for me is I have undervalued the role of PMO that PMO can play in my previous professional career. And so me personally, when I go into my next challenge or next assignment and a PMO is going to be part of the architecture, will think very differently about what the role of PMO can play. Hence the points I made at the last slide I covered.
Another question we might have time to answer. A PMO is often perceived as being an unnecessary or unwelcome layer of bureaucracy.
And thanks for writing into the rescue.
How do you overcome that?
How do you become what, sorry?
How do you, I'm repeating the question. A PMO is often perceived as being an unnecessary or unwelcome layer of bureaucracy. How do you overcome reluctance to engage with the PMO?
Yeah, so I think that for me is really, this is quite fundamental. So it needs to be an integral part of your delivery structure, not a bolt-on and not seen. You can have PMOs that are just scorekeepers. But I think if you invest in your PMO and you have the right skills to solve the problem that you're trying to solve, because let's face it, that's what it's about. So whatever it's a transformation, you're transforming to something so it's better. So you're trying to solve a problem. So I think if you invest in the right skills and that you have an approach whereby everybody involved in the PMO is clear that they're there to help solve a problem, not just to fill a template in and act as a conduit or become a policeman or woman who's hauling people over the coals for not delivering milestones. They have to be working hand in hand with those people responsible for delivery and practically offering valued support.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Ben. That was definitely a very interesting, very insightful presentation there. We shall gather up the rest of the questions which we haven't had a chance to answer, and we'll put something on the Project Futures platform later on. Thank you again, and for a reminder, there's one more session today, a panel discussion in MS Teams with experts in the digital and data field, starting in 14 minutes. Thank you all very much.